Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at, ladies and gents. I am Kura Isagami, your resident tinkerer and Medarotter, and this is the Medarot News Network, bringing you all the latest developments and happenings with our favorite pet fighting robot series. Now this week, it looks like we're not going to have anything too major upcoming. Looks like we're going to end June on a pretty quiet note, which really isn't too bad, given that we had the Omega Sisters collaboration early on in the month, and then the week 3 after that, we had the Medarot 4 event that highlighted Tyrell Beetle. So ending this one on a pretty quiet note really would be an openly welcome experience, especially for those that are probably hemorrhaging a lot of rubies through the collaboration and the Medarot 4 event, and might need to take some time to restock. However, they did announce the release of the new Onihime type coming to the gacha banners, and for that reason, I have officially labeled today's episode Oni Incoming. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. They announced and revealed the Onihime type Sarasashinahime, coming to the limited banners as a pickup gacha, with a head part of Dominion, right arm of Effect Clear, L arm of Hold, legs of Biped, and leg ability of Blow Beat. Now, overall, you might take one look at her kit and think, well, that's a pretty mixed melee kit overall. Certainly, she's got some pretty solid skills, right? And you would indeed be correct. The head part of Dominion, however, is where she really shines. With that skill of Dominion, which we've seen on only one other bot thus far in the game, and that was the Digimon collaboration model, Omega Knight. Just to touch briefly on what Dominion does, it changes all allies' terrain match bonus to A rank that is not currently S rank. It is a 30% buff to success of all parts across the team, and it also adds one additional heavy slot to every leg part that is not capped at 3. Now, for the most part, you could if you needed a support skill, you could probably go in with Cybercore or even Radar Sight and call it a day, because honestly, the buffs that they give are still pretty solid, even if it's just that success rate, and then removes any stealth or conceal buffs that the opponent might have. But Dominion is really where it takes that skill and amps it up to a couple higher levels, not only with the terrain buff and match, but also with the heavy limit boost. Now, for models that may perhaps make more use of heavy parts, this may not seem like a very useful skill to have, but say, for instance, you have a build in particular that requires having a heavy part or two over your limit, you would no longer have to face a negative debuff across all stats once Dominion has been put into play. Right arm of Effect Clear also, I'd say it's a more niche skill than anything else, because what it does is that when attacking the target, it checks to see if there are any positive buffs in play, and if so, it will deal extra bonus damage for the number of positive effects active on the target, but it will also then remove them from the target. Now, like I said, this is a pretty niche skill overall, but if you use it right, it can be a very dangerous attack. Unfortunately, as you see in that top middle, it does not sport any pierce damage, so unfortunately it'd be a one-hit spot nuke than anything else, but as a punish to anyone that's maybe using a bunch of support skills on the team, like shoot boost, melee boost, heater, cooler, this would be a good way to punish them just for having it on the team. And maybe cut them back down to size so you're all on an even playing field once again. Hold also is a pretty niche skill overall, but I'd say much more versatile than Effect Clear, as what it does is that it prevents evading or defending. I can't remember which one exactly off the top of my head, but it also grants a heat cool debuff of 25%. So even after inflicting it with this, you will see they will go just a hair slower, which honestly in the long run does actually make using it worthwhile, even if it does not have pierce damage and has a relatively low power output. Actually, no, the 1198 really isn't too bad for Hold, but even without pierce damage, that does kind of put it at a loss, but because it is an ailment, I would say that would be relatively forgivable in this case. Leg ability of Blow Beat does add an extra oomph to her kit, as what it does, it ignores a percentage of resist and evade stats on the target when attacking. So just by having this leg equipped, you're already going to be dealing just a hair more damage than usual, because you're already ignoring a percentage of their damage reducing skills that would cut the amount of damage you deal down. Now, overall, across the board, Sarasashinahime does have some pretty solid stats across the field. Almost 3,500 for the head, about between 2,700 and 2,900 for the arms, 3,500 roughly for the legs. Mobility of 800 though, that's actually really, really solid overall, which would put her honestly in one of the higher end of one of the faster biped legs in the game. Definitely not the fastest, but enough that would definitely make a very noticeable improvement, especially on S-rank terrains and with a Medarot that perhaps buffs mobility while running. I'd say overall, her arms, I'd say, are easily skippable if you're not hurting for any kind of ailments like effect clear or hold. But the head and legs is where she really shines, and for that reason, I would definitely recommend trying to make a shot or two at her, just to have those on hand so you have access to them, because you definitely will not be sorry having Dominion on the field. This especially is more so the case if, say, you joined the game late and missed out on the Digimon collab back in April. This is a great shot to pick up the Dominion skill again, so that you can have a hold of it and make use of it on future teams. Overall, this looks like the only highlighted banner that's coming for this week, so really good to save on rubies if Sarasashinahime isn't quite down your alley or someone you're interested in. And moving right on along ahead, we're going to go ahead and jump into the Fierce Battles this week. Doesn't look like we have any announced newcomers that were incoming, so all returnees this week, but all have a potential skill one way or another. The first one on the list is the Lily type, Lily Madonna, with a kit of triple laser, tank legs, and the leg ability of Haja. Now, overall, because she's a tank leg, that does kind of put Lily Madonna at a disadvantage, given that tank legs do have the slowest mobility in the game, and really no terrain bonus at all. But honestly, I would argue in this case, Lily Madonna probably has one of the few tank legs that is actually decent. Its leg mobility really isn't too bad. I'd say higher end in comparison to most other tank legs, but the leg ability of Haja also does come in handy, as it cleanses negative ailments when you're charging Metaforce, so that does make a very handy use for keeping ailments off your tail in the case where the enemy may have an ailment fighter that you need to keep from getting in your face and getting in the way of your attacks. Triple kit of laser, I'd say, doesn't make her super viable, as there's no real way to charge them, but it does make for excellent misc parts, so for random shooters that need a good nuking skill. Laser does have a pretty solid base damage overall, can't really complain with it. It does have pierce damage, even if it does have lower modifiers than beam. Out of 10, I'd probably rate the viability of Lily Madonna maybe 4 or 5, maybe possibly a 5.5. Not for the sake of having her as a pure set or just for tank legs, but just for the sake of having her as misc parts. The leg ability of Haja does make it kind of handy to keep raised just in case you might need them. But overall, I'd say she's kind of an iffy set. The next Fierce Battle that we have coming up is the Owl type Medarot with a kit of laser, free shot, press, float legs, and the leg ability of Torturer. Now, Medarot specializes exclusively in shooting, as obvious by this kit here, but she does bring one extra skill to the table that makes using her very, very useful, and that is her right arm of Freeze Shot. Now, I'm not going to go over what Freeze and Freeze Shot do, it's pretty easy to explain, but just to remind you folks that when an opponent is frozen, the next hit they take, if they are not unfrozen before then, is guaranteed to be a critical hit. So this is a perfect skill to use for ailment fighters, to keep more dangerous foes off your tail and delay their overall use, so that you can maybe cut them down to size before they have a chance to cripple any strategies. Laser and press, honestly, both are pretty solid skills as well. I mentioned laser as well with Lily Madonna. Overall, not a bad skill overall. Does require a little bit of a charge in order to actually make good use of it, but with the right build, that really isn't too hard of a requirement to meet. Press is honestly pretty solid for punishing a lot of heavy users or users that use 2 or more heavy parts. Leg ability float's also really nice with the Torturer. Unfortunately, though, as a pure set, doesn't look like she's going to be using Torturer all that heavily, since she doesn't actually have any ailment moves aside from Free Shot. However, in the moment that she does use it, she can actually set herself up pretty decently with it. What she can do is maybe on turn 1, use Free Shot to hold someone in place, head back the line, and maybe use Press or Laser, and go in for that extra punish with the Torture ability. So overall, not too bad, definitely worth picking up her parts. I'd say she'd probably rate about a 6 or 7 out of 10 in terms of viability. Definitely worth picking up her parts and farming for them if you're in need of a Free Shot in particular, but also in need of extra shooting parts for a female team. And the extra float leg definitely does not hurt, but if you are going to use it for that ability of Torturer, do make sure you pair it with an ailment so that you can make the most of that ability and not waste it. And the last Fierce battle that we have for this week is the DGU-0 GO Death, with that kit of Optic Guard, Double Sacrifice, Float Legs, and the ability of Illusion. Now, overall, you'd probably take a look at the Sacrifice and say, well, that means he's going to hit really, really hard, right? And to an extent, you are correct. Just to touch base on Sacrifice briefly, it does include that damage bonus from remaining HP into attack conversion, so that would be your extra damage bonus, but unfortunately, that would mean you only get 2 good hits, and then after that, you're kind of out in left field with nothing really to do. Head part of Optic Guard does kind of make the use of his head kind of niche, because it is basically a glorified meat shield that only negates optic-based moves, which is Laser, Beam, Hyper Beam, and Beam Sword. Aside from those, he's basically going to be intercepting every single blow that comes his way, or in the case of an ally, which, kind of like what I put with Rhino Rush back a couple episodes ago, is basically putting a target on your face that says, shoot me. Leg ability of Illusion does give him a little bit of forgiveness, though, with the ability to grant stealth when charging Metaforce. However, in order to use that, it does actually require you to spend a turn to charge it, so that overall does kind of hurt his versatility and viability, even if it is a float leg, which has A rank on every terrain. Overall, I'd probably rank Geodeath maybe a 4 or 5. Honestly, I'd probably say more like a 4.5, maybe out of 10 in terms of viability. Farm his parts just for the sake of having them, but in terms of making good use of them as a pure set or mixed parts, I'd unfortunately say he's nothing more than a trophy unit more than anything else. In terms of events this week, like I mentioned, it is going to be kind of a quiet week. We do have marathon survival battles coming back for another round. And just to touch base on the rules of these, every part you use in a round, when you complete it upon victory, will be added to a banned parts list, which means you are prohibited from using those parts for the remainder of the round until you reach a checkpoint that refreshes your list. Now, you can redeem up to 4 parts to use a second time between rounds after a part has been listed as banned. But this is more a case of survival to see how far can you go using different parts under different requirements and still maintain wins without having to use your standard strategy or build. Now, a special note they added for this week's list of marathon survival, there will be a lot of bots that are using support-based enemies and buffs, so effect clear, such as with Sarasashinahime, will be incredibly handy to make use of for that extra punish. If you can't get a hold of the Onihime type, or maybe, for instance, she's just not interesting to you, if you maybe snagged La Pucelle, the Joan of Arc type, her arm also does have effect clear, so you do have access to it from there in the regular pool. If you maybe snagged that, or already have snagged it, maybe trying for the Hime type, so you won't be at a total loss overall. But it's overall a challenge of how far can you go. Best of luck to you, Medarotters, when that goes around. I can definitely say in later rounds, you're definitely pushing me to my limit. But general tip I would probably give you, if you could raise parts to at least 3-star overall, some 4 stars, but mostly 5s, but if you could raise them to 3 overall, I'd say you're at a pretty solid spot. You generally can't go wrong with a lot of them, and I do wish you guys all the best of luck with that. And do tell me how you think it is, or how well you think you made it through this event. I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Now, we are also announced a brand new Medarot incoming. We did see a hint of this BEF0 type prior to, but we officially got to see first look art and design and name of it, of Hodo Yoshimofuri, with a brand new attack skill called Meteor. What it does is that a gunpowder attack, much like missile or napalm, but it deals 1.5 times extra damage if your target is on fire. So this will make a very good use of fire skills such as Hell Phoenix, or even Kabuto Benimaru's head if you might have it. So we're making use of those DOT ailments and some extra punish with that as well. Arms are supposedly Break Hammer, which will make him very nice for a heavy punish overall. I'm anticipating he's probably going to be a tank leg, so I would anticipate he'd probably be all triple heavy as well. These are only speculations, really, more than anything else. But overall, the kit doesn't look too shabby. Looking forward to seeing more information on it when the information is revealed. The name supposedly isn't alluding to proper marbling in relation to a cut of good beef. And the motive in particular is a Japanese black cattle. And one interesting note I'd like to mention on it as well, as a rather interesting little attention to detail, is that on each different piece of the body, it actually mentions what kind of cut of meat it is, much like those posters that you'd see at maybe a deli counter. So really unique design overall. Interested in seeing more on him. Currently, it seems there is a Twitter contest going on where followers that are following the Medarot page can actually submit ideas for what the part names would be. So if you're interested in maybe submitting a name or two as an idea, definitely go look to them on Twitter and see what you could do and maybe submit those names. Now, something else that was touched on last week, but I didn't have a chance to actually mention it. Medarot actually joined the VTubing trend in a surprise twist that not a lot of people really saw coming. The band vocalist type Shushu Pop announced her debut and reveal last week on the Medarot channel of becoming a VTuber. Took a couple minutes to explain herself and how she is, what she likes. They definitely picked a very cute model for sure, and very fitting given that she's a newcomer to Medarot S. So looking forward to seeing more content from her. She did co-host this week's episode as well, with the regular narrator as a guest, so looking forward to seeing more from her. She did mention that she does enjoy doing a lot of song covers from anime and Vocaloid-based music, so would be really interested to see that from a Medarot perspective through Shushu Pop as a VTuber. So here's to hoping that we see more of her as time goes on. Looking forward to seeing more content not only from the channel but also from her. And with that, there was one other piece of news I did want to touch base on. Last week's episode of Bop and Beats, I did mention that we were having a major BGM update. Looking over the details again, it looks like that was actually going to be delayed to the next huge update, which will be coming on 7/15. So it is coming, folks, but just gotta wait a little bit longer for it. But that is only one of the many huge things that they're planning for that update, so stay tuned when that week does come up, and I'll be sure to keep you guys in the know for it. Aside from that, any extra news that are coming from Project Rising Beetle, we are, as I mentioned, continually looking for translators for the Medarot Reloaded manga, and any of the Medarot games. Currently, the progress is going towards Medarot 3, so if you have any knowledge of Japanese, or if you know how to code or clean, and have some time on your hands, we have plenty of openings and are hugely appreciative of any help that you might be willing to offer. This is the same team that brought you the Medarot 1 translation, and we have plans once 3 finishes to maybe look to 4, 5, Navi, and ideally even all the games as an end result. But currently the progress towards 3 is coming along very nicely, but we are in need of extra hands and some extra support. So if you have some time on your hands and would like to donate some time and effort, feel free to reach out to me. I am more than happy to get you in touch with the right people that can bring you up to speed on what's going on, and what currently still needs handled. Aside from that, I'd say that covers all of this week's announcements, along with some things from last week that I didn't have a chance to touch base on. If you'd like to know more, you can follow us below at the Medarot News Network on Facebook, or the Metabots Forever community also on Facebook. You can follow us and join the community on Project Rising Beetle below on Discord at the link provided. And if you have any questions or comments for me, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Isagamikura. You can also put comments down below here in the channel to see if there's anything that you'd like to see me do as future videos on the channel. I have a couple ideas that I've been thinking about and maybe considering putting some effort towards, but I would really like to hear more information and maybe some feedback and ideas on what you all would like to see. So do feel free to leave those comments. I am more than open to any feedback with that. In addition to that, if you could also drop a subscribe, maybe hit that notification bell so you can get first look whenever my videos do go live to keep up to date with anything Medarot related. I would greatly appreciate that. Sharing videos also is hugely appreciated. And with that, thanks again for stopping by, folks. It's always happy to have you in for a visit. Until next time, this is your host, Kura Isagami of the Medarot News Network, signing out.